Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at noon, South Korea and the United States kick off their annual military drills despite fierce protests by North Korea as a new group of Korean families separated since the Korean War get together for brief reunions. Seoul protests Tokyo's renewed claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island, accusing Japan of trying to justify its imperialistic history and whitewash its wartime atrocities. Plus, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics come to a close with host Russia on top of the medal table and the Olympic flag handed over to Korea, the host country of the 2018 Games. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. The two Koreas are holding the next round of reunions for families separated since the Korean War at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort on this Monday.
Today is the second day of the event for nearly 500 divided family members from both sides.
And for more details, let's go live now to our correspondent Hwang Sung-hee at the Inter-Korean Dialogue headquarters. So, Sung-hee, what's in store for the war-separated families today?
Good afternoon, Mark, Yusan. On the second day of the event, the family members will have 3 chances to reunite. In the morning from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., each family has held individual meetings at the hotel rooms of the North Korean participants at the Mount Kumgang resort. Now, the meetings were held behind closed doors, but this is when the families exchange gifts. Most South Korean families prepare daily necessities like clothes, underwear, snacks, toothpaste, and toothbrushes, items that are not too pricey, as well as some cash. The families are scheduled to meet for a group luncheon from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., which is about now, so they're probably having something to eat together at the Mount Kumgang resort. A group meeting will be held from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., and this will be the final meeting of the day. Now, the new round of the reunions are much larger in scale than the first round, with nearly 400 South Korean family members crossing the border on Sunday to meet around 90 North Korean family members that applied for the event. But this time around, only one family is a reunion between a parent and a child, with most being meetings between siblings or even nephews and half-brothers or sisters. More than half of the 70,000 registered South Korean divided family members are over the age of 80, which is a reminder that time is running out and that the reunions should really be held on a regular basis. Now, the families participating in the new round of the reunions will have one more chance to reunite tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. for an hour before they part again. Guys?
Well, thank you very much, Sung-hee. I'm sure those families will try and cherish every single moment they have with their long-lost relatives. That was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting live on the latest on the new round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. And now, the emotional issue of the family reunions is not just confined to the Korean peninsula.
And we're going to connect live now to our Hwang Ji-hye in Los Angeles for details. Ji-hye.
Well, some Korean families torn apart by the Korean War live here in Los Angeles, and they are hoping to meet their long-lost relatives before it's too late. Unfortunately for them, the outlook looks bleak. There was a ray of hope for 88-year-old Kim Bong-gun when the two Koreas agreed to proceed with reunions for families separated since the Korean War earlier this month. More than 60 years have passed since Kim last saw his sister, brother-in-law, and cousin, who was in kindergarten when he fled North Korea.
I missed him so much. I can still clearly remember my cousin's face. She used to follow me and hold my hand when I walked her to kindergarten.
His faint hope, however, quickly flickered out. Including Kim, an estimated 100,000 Korean American families have ties to North Korea, but this time only 170 families from the two Koreas were allowed to meet their long-lost relatives. Many of the separated Korean American families live in Southern California, which has the largest population of Koreans outside of the divided peninsula. For them, Cha Chang-jun, a member of the National Unification Advisory Council of Los Angeles, says there's not much hope for a reunion anytime soon.
There are hundreds of thousands of separated families in South Korea, and just for them to take a trip to the north to meet their families will take decades. I don't think people like me in the United States will have a chance.
Although Korean Americans are able to take a private trip to the north to meet their families using their U.S. citizenship, not many consider it a feasible option.
There are organizations that help Korean Americans visit North Korea to meet their families, but it costs a lot of money.
People in the Korean American community that have families in the north are hoping that the reunions led by the two Koreas take place on a regular basis and on a larger scale. Pyongyang, however, has a record of unilaterally calling off a scheduled family reunion, scheduled family reunion. Whenever it has a bone to pick with South Korea and the United States. Guys?
Well, thank you very much to our reporter there, Hwang Sung-hee, and let's hope that the 2 days of reunions coming up go without a hitch. As Sung-hee mentioned there have been some problems in the past, and let's hope there are many more reunion events in the future.
And that was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting from Los Angeles on the thousands of Korean American families who are also desperate to see their long-lost relatives again.
Now, South Korea and the US have kicked off their annual military exercises despite North Korea's protests that such drills hurt warming inter-Korean ties created by landmark reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
This year's drills are somewhat smaller than the past, considering the recent progress in inter-Korean relations. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Over 5,000 U.S. military personnel are taking part in this year's joint South Korea-U.S. military exercise, Key Resolve. Key Resolve, which runs from this Monday to March 6th, is a defensive computer simulated drill that aims at enhanced command and control of all units around the nation in a wartime scenario.
As we said in our official announcement, Korea-US will start its Key Resolve and full legal exercise as planned on February 24th.
For the first time, this year's exercise includes training to counter all stages from preparation to launch of Pyongyang's weapons of mass destruction as part of the Allies' deterrence strategy. 7,500 U.S. troops are taking part in a series of joint and combined field training exercises dubbed Full Eagle, which also start Monday and run through April 18th. Last year's exercises involved 10,000 U.S. troops. U.S. aircraft carriers and stealth bombers that were used in 2013 have been left out this time to avoid provoking North Korea. Pyongyang has remained comparatively quiet about this year's exercises, choosing to refrain from threatening to attack the South as it has done in previous years. Keeping the steadily improving progress in the inter-Korean relations in mind, South Korea's military has said it will not heavily promote the drills, nor will it engage in any other acts that could anger its northern neighbor. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The South Korean government launched a strong protest against Japan's renewed claims to Korea's Dokdo Island over the weekend.
Yes, Seoul's foreign ministry is accusing Tokyo of rationalizing its imperialistic history. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korea's foreign ministry summoned Hisashi Mishikami, a senior minister at Japan's embassy in Seoul on Sunday, to protest Tokyo's recent move to advance its territorial claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. Korea is up in arms over a Japanese official's attendance at a ceremony on Saturday that claims Dokdo, which Japan calls Takeshima, is Japanese territory. A vice minister attended the ceremony held in Shimane Prefecture to celebrate Takeshima Day on February 22nd to reassert Tokyo's claim. Seoul has repeatedly said that having government officials participate in the event would seriously impact Korea-Japan relations, as Tokyo is Korean territory and is under Korean jurisdiction. To counter Tokyo's move, Seoul's foreign ministry released a video promoting Korea's sovereignty over Tokyo on its website and YouTube this weekend. The website also includes a link to an animated film about Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. The ministry plans to bring the so-called Comfort Women issue to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva next month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Crown Prince of Japan has voiced his opposition to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's push to revise the country's pacifist constitution. Crown Prince Naruhito made the remarks just prior to his 54th birthday on Sunday. He said he respects the country's pacifist constitution, which he says has played a vital role in maintaining the peace and prosperity of the country. Abe is pushing to revise the constitution to support the country's self-defense forces, a move viewed by Korea and Japan as an attempt to revive Japan's imperialist past.
In the U.S. state of Virginia, where there is a large Korean-American community, the so-called East Sea movement regarding the naming of the body of water between Korea and Japan in school texts has produced some tangible results.
Yes, it really has. But will this sentiment travel across the country to the western state of California, where there's also a huge population of Korean Americans? Our Na Hyung-kyung filed this report from Los Angeles.
The U.S. state of California, home to the largest population of Korean Americans and Japanese Americans in the country. Some may see this as the next ground for a political battle over how to refer to the body of water between Korea and Japan in school textbooks. Virginia State will soon require the Korean preferred title of East Sea to be used alongside the Sea of Japan in its textbooks, while in New York a similar bill has also been proposed. But the issue has not stirred up much attention yet in California.
저희들은 LA에서는 먼저 소녀상을 지키는 데에 대해서
The president of the Korean American Federation in Los Angeles says the greater LA area has been and still is busy trying to protect the so-called Comfort Women Memorial statue in Glendale Central Park from being removed.
일본에서는 굉장히
So right now is not the most suitable time to raise another issue and divert attention, whether it be the East Sea bill or anything else.
동해 변기도 더 나가서 이것이 어느 정도의 완성 단계가 되면은
But Baez stresses that if the issue surfaces in the area, the Korean American community will be sure to throw itself behind the movement 100%. Speculation is, though, despite the large Japanese American community, this may not be an issue of great contention within California, much like in Virginia, partially due to the fact that Japan's history of immigration to the U.S. compared to that of Koreans dates much further back.
If there are Japanese Americans speaking about this with the same interest that Korean Americans are speaking about it, it most likely would be what we call Shin Issei, or first generation. My guess is even if you were to speak to Japanese expatriates or students studying here, most of them would not have a strong opinion on what's going on in Virginia.
The variable would rather be how much more proactive Tokyo will be in its opposition to the East Sea movement in California, given its failed attempts to stop the bill from going through in Virginia. But one thing for sure at this point is that the Korean American community will likely rally behind the EC movement if the issue indeed surfaces in California. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News, Los Angeles.
Tuesday marks the first anniversary since President Park Geun-hye took office, and recent polls show more than half of Koreans think she's doing a good job. In a survey conducted by research firm Gallup Korea last week, 55% of the respondents gave high marks for President Park's performance over the past 12 months, an approval rating higher than what she received right after her inauguration last February. She has the second highest approval rating among Korean presidents going into their second year in office, following late former President Kim Dae-jung. People gave high marks for her North Korea and security policies, but poor marks for her efforts towards fulfilling her campaign pledges.
Now, from the emotional wins of the Netherlands, the Dutch team sweeping medals in speed skating, to the controversies like the stunning performance that saw Korea's ice queen Kim Yeon-ah taking the silver medal in figure skating, the Sochi Winter Olympics truly captured, I think, the world's attention.
After 17 days of breathtaking sporting action, the curtain went down on the games on Sunday with a typically colorful spectacle. Connie Lee has more.
Splashes of color lit up the night sky at the start of the closing ceremony of the Olympics. Sochi 2014, Russia's first Winter Olympics, came to an extravagant end on Sunday with music, dancers, and art. There was even some humor in the closing when only 4 rings of the Olympic symbol opened up, a nod to the technical glitch during the opening ceremony when one failed to open. The 5th ring eventually opened, followed by the singing of hundreds of children, ballet by the Bolshoi, and performances by some Korean artists, including soprano Cho Soo-mi. Sochi 2014 was the most expensive Winter Games ever, with Russia spending about $50 billion and a record 88 nations competing. In the medal standings, host country Russia came out on top, with 13 gold medals and a whopping 33 Olympic medals in total. Korea ranked 13th, with all of its medals coming from the ice. The host country of the next Winter Games came out with 3 gold medals, 3 silver, and 2 bronze medals. In his closing address, International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach hailed the success of the Sochi Olympics, saying that everybody with an open mind could see the face of a new Russia, efficient and friendly, patriotic and open to the world. And then the flag was passed from Sochi to Pyeongchang, the host city of the 2018 Winter Games. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
So as the world says thank you to Sochi for hosting a wonderful Winter Olympics, it's also saying good luck, or what we say here in Korea, fighting, to the next host, the Korean resort town of Pyeongchang.
Yes, and our Connie Kim has the rundown on the town that has wanted the Olympics so badly for so many years.
Sports fans' eyes were focused on the 4 genius musicians, including world-famous soprano Cho Soo-mi, as they belted out an Arirang medley at the closing ceremony in Sochi. Their performance celebrating the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics whet the appetite of sports fans all over Korea. Some 200 Korean observers have been busily running around Sochi, taking notes on the venues, security, and transportation to get a first-hand look at how the Olympics look and feel when they're in full swing. In 2018, it will have been 30 years since Korea hosted the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul. Korea also becomes just the 2nd Asian country after Japan to host the Winter Olympics. Pyeongchang is located roughly 200 kilometers from the capital Seoul, but with bullet train lines in place, fans and athletes will be able to get to and from Pyeongchang and Seoul in under an hour. The games will be held in 3 locations. Skiing sports and bobsleigh will be held in Pyeongchang and Cheongsan, with skating sports taking place in Cheongning. About 100 medals will be given out to athletes competing in 15 sporting events. Although Korea expects to invest just 1/5 of what Russia poured into the Sochi Olympics, the nation expects to invite athletes from a record amount of countries in 4 years' time. In a bid to create what they're calling New Horizons in Pyeongchang, Korea's organizing committee has expressed hope North Korea will send some athletes and officials to the Games. With plans to complete construction of the venues by 2016, the organizing committee has started getting ready to welcome athletes and sports fans in the best possible way by being ready well ahead of time. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Hello everyone, I'm Kwon So-ah with the latest news from around the world. Ukraine opened a new chapter over the weekend as former parliamentary speaker Alexander Turchinov was made acting president after months of anti-government protests against former leader Viktor Yanukovych. Shin Se-min reports.
Ukraine's new interim president Alexander Turchinov has vowed to chart a course toward European integration now that Russia-backed President Viktor Yanukovych has been ousted. Turchinov also said, however, that Ukraine is willing to build relations with Russia in a new and fair partnership of good neighborly relations. Meanwhile, Parliament has decided to bump up the presidential election by almost a year to the end of May. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled Kiev Saturday, and Turchinov was elected to the presidency in a parliamentary vote. Turchinov is a longtime ally of both the main opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko, who was freed from jail Saturday. Her release was one of the conditions of the EU-Ukraine trade pact that Yanukovych walked away from last year in favor of closer ties to Russia. His actions sparked the protests that have had the country up in arms, with more than 100 anti-government protesters having died in the past 2 weeks. The U.S. has said that it is not the interest of Ukraine, Russia, Europe, or the U.S. to see the country split. National Security Advisor Susan Rice warned Russia against sending troops to Ukraine, saying it would be a grave mistake. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
On to the next story. A car bomb explosion killed at least 14 people and injured scores more near a field hospital in Syria's rebel-held town of Atme, close to the border with Turkey, on Sunday. It is not yet clear who was behind the attack. A camp in the region is home to thousands of refugees. Meanwhile, on Saturday, the UN Security Council, for the first time, unanimously agreed on access to humanitarian aid in Syria. And moving over to Thailand, more blood was spilled in Bangkok on Sunday as 2 people, including a 12-year-old boy, were killed in a car bomb attack in a shopping district. At least 22 others were wounded. Posting on her official Facebook page, Prime Minister Yingnak Shinawat condemned the violent acts of anti-government protesters, saying they were, quote, terrorist acts for political gain. Demonstrators have been demanding Yingnak step down for months, as they say she is merely a puppet for her exiled brother and former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawat. Global financial leaders vowed to foster global economic growth by increasing investment and employment as the G20 wrapped up in Australia on Sunday. The final communiqué released after the 2-day meeting said the countries would develop ambitious but realistic policies that would stimulate job creation and lift their collective GDP by more than 2% over the next 5 years. Detailed growth strategies will be discussed at the G20 in Brisbane in November. The meeting also addressed the shock being felt by emerging economies as the U.S. Federal Reserve tapers its massive stimulus program, which has led to a capital flight from vulnerable economies. Pope Francis and 18 new Vatican cardinals gathered at a celebration mass at St. Peter's Basilica on Sunday, following the official appointment of 19 cardinals from around the world the day before. Korea's Andrew Yom-soo-jung was among them. Pope Francis told the new cardinals to be good servants, not good bosses, stressing Catholic leaders should not consider themselves privileged. His words reflect the simple style Francis has shown since his election last year. Cardinals are the most senior clergymen below the Pope and his closest advisors.
Good afternoon. Well, fine dust alert was issued in Seoul today as fine and ultra-fine dust particles continue to blow in from China. So the level of fine dust particle is 3 to 5 times higher than usual in most regions. And as of this morning, the Jeollado province have the highest level of dust particles. So we're advised to avoid outdoor activities and be sure to have a face mask with us before heading out. And as for this week, we could bask under lots of sun and enjoy mild weather condition if the level of dust particles return to normal level. And it looks like we have rain in the forecast nationwide in the middle of the week. So please keep that in mind. And here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 10. Gwangju will top out at 13. And Daegu and Busan will see a high of 14 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon will climb up to 13 and 12 respectively. And Mall Kumgang will get up to 2 later in the day. Now that's all for today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you to Jion there for the weather, as always, and those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Stay with Arirang TV for the latest on the day's headlines on our next newscast at 2 p.m. Korea time.